Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional and provide practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, Justin Daniels here. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our Wall Street Journal bestseller and new book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. You're very smirky today.
It's exciting. The whole Wall Street Journal thing was pretty cool.
It's very cool. In fact, I put my Wall Street Journal copy on the floor here right before our podcast recording.
Right next to the dog. Wow.
No. The dog gets a wonderful, special, spacious place to sleep. The newspaper's just by my feet.
I see. All right. Well, why don't we introduce our guest today? Take it away.
Absolutely. So today we have Vaibhav Antil, who is the CEO of Privado.ai, a privacy tech company. He started his career by co-founding Jukebox, a music tech startup acquired by Gaana, where he served as a senior product manager. He leaped into the world of privacy consulting after the introduction of GDPR and has been helping companies stay compliant since. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Justin. I'm super excited. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me here.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I want you to share is you recently received a pretty cool award from the IAPP, which is the Information Association of Privacy Professionals. So I'm going to ask if you can, I gave a little hint about how your career started, but can you share a little bit about how it came to founding Privado today and winning a really cool award?
Yeah, so first of all, on the award, so it's still, we are the finalists, so the award announcement will happen,
That's
I think,
true.
about mid of November. Yeah, but even like being finalist is super cool, right? Like IPP is where you get all the privacy information. In any case, it's probably like the single largest body of privacy professionals. So yeah, it was super cool to participate and be one of the finalists.
Now,
Yeah, and I think
share
like
how many finalists there are. There's not a lot of finalists.
yeah, I think there are 3 finalists in the North America region where we
Right.
participated in.
It's a
Yeah,
very
so
exciting accomplishment. Kudos to you.
yeah, thank you. And also like the exciting piece for us was we participated because of our open source project. So and we'll talk about this as we go through the podcast, but like the entire Privado platform is powered by an open source project. So like our core code scanning product is completely open source for any privacy or security engineer to start using and start plugging in. So that's completely open source, that's completely free. And that was our submission. And so we're super excited to see where it goes.
Congratulations again. So tell us a little bit about how you got started to founding the company.
Awesome. So yeah, I'll talk about my background a little bit. So yeah, growing up, actually, I grew up in a lawyer family. I still remember I was a kid studying and seeing my dad practice for his cases. So looking back, I do think like some bit of that lawyer persona sort of came into me via osmosis, I would say. Uh, how it turned out later in my life was I was sort of very comfortable operating in regulatory markets. So if I remember my first startup, as you were also mentioning, was Jukebox. It was a B2B music streaming application. And there I had to figure out licensing from labels, music labels, and licensing bodies, right? So super regulatory. You can't even start the startup unless you get the licensing in place. And then what happened was that got acquired by another the largest music streaming company in India. And when I was there, I think it was about 2018. So GDPR was a big project and it was going around. It was a tough problem. There was no real clear solution even at that point of time. And then once I left the company, Indian government introduced a privacy law, personal data protection bill in our parliament. That was about 2020. So for me, I think I was lucky enough to have these experiences going through my professional career. I sort of connected the dots, and then, as I said, I was able to read the law. As I was reading contracts back for my first startup, and then figured it out, and then realized that whatever the Indian government is passing is going to be super difficult. It's basically GDPR plus plus in some sense, especially if you look at data sovereignty requirements. And that's how the journey really started. And yeah, I think interestingly, my first project, again, like from my background perspective, I come from a product background. So I was always thinking about, hey, how does this impact product and engineering teams? And how can they cope up with these privacy laws? Because the way we used to ship product was very different. Ship it fast. That entire idea of ship code fast, break things. That's inherently how product folks think, and then that's sort of something which does not sit well with how you do privacy, right? And we'll talk about that as well on how Privado enables that piece. But yeah, that I think these kind of experiences of connecting the dots backward and me being in the right places, that's how Privado got started in the first place. And then my first project, interestingly, was an e-commerce company. So I was doing data mapping for an e-commerce company, all manual, doing interviews and assessments. And essentially, what we did was we spent 9 months building this huge Excel sheet of data map. And at the end of the day, my co-founder and CTO Prashant told me, "Hey, whatever you have done, we can probably reach there 80% by scanning the code of whatever engineers have built, products and applications." And that was kind of our light bulb moment. So it came by working with customers and sort of my own experiences across companies. So that's the story of Privado.
That was a fun story. The osmosis piece is interesting. So, as you being the attorney, Justin, does that mean our children are learning via osmosis some legal principles here?
Maybe. See, I'm waiting for V to talk about his next startup where he disrupts the entire music industry with blockchain so people sell their music peer to peer. I think that could be your next venture, given all that you've learned about that very interesting industry.
I guess that's already happening. There are some companies doing that today.
Well, anyway, today our topic is privacy. And so, from your perspective, what are the big privacy challenges you see companies facing today?
Yeah, so I was sort of thinking about this a lot, even when I'm speaking to more privacy professionals or even security professionals. I think it's the same problem that's been there from day one, is sort of getting even visibility on the use of personal data and data flows. I think that's been a constant challenge across the last, I don't know, 5 6 years since GDPR came in, right? And probably let's take the example of Meta. So I think this year there was a leaked document by Meta, and then I'm going to quote something from that document itself, which was talking about this challenge, right? So I think in the document it was about, hey, we do not have an adequate level of control and explainability over how our system use data, and thus we can confidently make controlled policy changes or external commitments such as we will not use X data for Y purpose. And this is exactly what regulators expect us to do, increasing our risk of mistakes and misrepresentation. I think this is something which is super interesting because Meta has the highest number of privacy and security engineers. Probably they will have the largest budget. But even there, you see the same basic problem that you don't know what data you collect and how it is used. And like the purpose limitation, you want to make those representation in a privacy policy that this is how your data will be used, but at the end of the day you don't really know what happens with it. So I think that's the biggest problem or the biggest challenge I see companies facing today, specifically if you are a tech company with engineers. This is a problem that everyone says is even today's problem, right? And if you think about it, like what's the underlying problem, why this challenge still exists? I think the reason is that you had this agile development revolution which started, wherein everyone was said as a developer, hey, build code fast, ship features fast, do innovation, do iteration with your end customers. And what it leads to is that you are in a situation where you're building nice products, so they're user centric, you're building them fast, but unintentionally you are leading to either current or future privacy harms. And I truly believe until you give engineers privacy tools, like they have tools for testing, uh, you will not be in a situation where you can solve this challenge. You'll always be firefighting, you'll always have privacy debt, you'll always be in a situation where you get fined or breached, and then you're like, how do we solve it? And at that point of time, it's a really, really big problem to solve.
Sophie, you just shared something called privacy debt. Can you explain a little bit more what that means?
Yeah, it's as simple as like let's imagine a company which is just starting up. It has a nice mobile app, and then you just launch your first app. You have a single form where you're collecting first name, last name, email address, right? So pretty simple architecture. And as you get more and more traction, you are making decisions on data collection, data sharing, data storage, right? What privacy debt is, as you start collecting this data, you make certain decisions about user permission. So you can either take a coarse location or take a precise location. Let's say you don't make the right decision, you take precise location, even if you don't need it. That data enters your databases, then it goes to another third party, goes to an SDK, goes to an advertiser, and slowly what happens is this centralized database, which at the start of your development of a company is one or two databases, suddenly becomes thousands of databases, thousands of services, thousands of third party sharing, thousands of logs. And that's when you get a privacy person to say, hey, can you help us with data mapping? And that's the privacy that you inherit. That's the privacy that you.
Thank you. So, in the other piece that I want to ask you is you'll mention that Privado is kind of a developer friendly privacy platform. What does that mean to be a developer friendly privacy platform? Can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, like we operate specifically for technology companies who are developers, right? And as I was saying, the entire problem start because as you're writing code, you're making decisions about data collection, sharing, processing, storage, etc. And what you really want to do is essentially give tools to developers, as you have given them tool for testing, for just for security, for data quality. You want them to have privacy tools available when they are writing the code, so that they don't ship products which have privacy risks or harm. So that's the basic concept. Now we are kind of obsessed with the developers, which are the end users, and sort of rethink the entire privacy problem. Hey, if we have to make sure that they like a privacy product, how would it look? How do we make sure that they really adopt the product? Because that's kind of the real solution in our minds. So to do that, we do a couple of things. So the first thing we do is we see this language gap between engineering teams and privacy teams. So engineers, they're thinking in code, privacy teams are thinking in policies. So and that leads to a situation where probably you are saying, hey, do you delete the data after retention period? And that means something in privacy, but in engineering, it could mean anonymization, pseudo-anonymization, partially deleting it. It could mean many things. So the first thing we do is we sort of try now in our product, we bridge this gap between engineers and privacy. The way we do that is like the core of Privado product is a code scanning product. Essentially, for a developer, we are showing the privacy impact of the code they have written at the code level. Literally, they see lines of code and where we detected personal data and the corresponding privacy risk. But for privacy teams, they see an aggregated view, which is ROPA report, data flow diagram, privacy impact assessment. So this is sort of the same view is made in such a way that privacy teams can see the overall impact on a, let's say, product level. But for the end engineer, they actually see the line of code where they have a misconfigured permission or data leaking to a log, things like that. So I think the first thing for being a developer friendly privacy platform is speaking their language, which is code, which is what the entire Privado platform is about. The second thing we do is being present in the developer workflow. So essentially, like whenever we find an issue which happens because of a new code push, we essentially integrate within GitHub. So we literally, whenever a new code push happens, we add a comment to GitHub itself. That's where engineers are spending most of their time. And that enables and that makes sure that they're fixing whatever issue Privado is finding. And finally, I also feel by making sure we're not just flagging issue, we're also giving them remediation with code examples. So what would be a nice example of, so let's say if you detect that you have this personal data flowing to logs, giving them an example of how they can fix that, how they can use encryption libraries to ensure that that personal data is obfuscated or encrypted before it goes to your logs, right? So I think these are the three things that primarily we do to make sure the end user, which is the developer, really likes the platform, adopts it, and then ultimately everyone else benefits: the privacy team, security team, the data governance.
So can you share a little bit more about how your product works to scan for privacy risks at that code level? It's literally privacy by design in the code.
Yeah, 100%. So essentially, like the way our product works is, imagine it like an X-ray for your products and applications. It will go scan the code, and the journey will literally start by first detecting personal data and its sources. What I mean is we have a list of 150 data elements, and that's coming from CPRA, GDPR, other standards like HIPAA, PCI, and we would go in and tag variables as, hey, this variable is first name, this variable is credit card number, so on and so forth. And by sources, I mean, where does the data journey start? So it could start from a user form, it could start from a user permission, it could start from a database or an API. So first, it's tagging sources of data and what data does your product or application has. That's sort of the starting of Privado. The second thing is we also tag all the destinations of data, which could be anything from an API to a third-party API, a package like an SDK, like a advertisement SDK, logs, databases. So you have a situation where you have sources of data and what data and destinations of data. And then what we do is we create a nice data flow diagram. And this is all from the code, it's all automatic. So at the end of the day, you have visibility in the sense of, okay, we have this location data which is coming from an end user and is flowing to an advertisement SDK, and that's basically how what we are doing with data. And we do this across the company, across all products, applications, be it user facing or internal, being developed by engineers. So that becomes like the foundation of our privacy code scan. Once you have this personal data information, then on top of it, we have a rules engine to detect privacy risk, data security risk, so on and so forth. So just to give you an example, it could be, hey, you are collecting excessive data. So you have, instead of coarse location, you are collecting precise location, or you have excessive data sharing. So you have sensitive data like health data flowing to an literal ad SDK, and that's going to be like a privacy breach of tomorrow. Uh, or it could be as simple as you have a privacy policy where you have said that you would only collect X data elements. And if that becomes a guardrail for your product development, if data collection goes more beyond than that, that's a privacy risk. That's something that Privado can flag.
So, privacy programs encompass people, process, and technology, like we've just described. So, if you think about, this tool, this is obviously geared for engineers, but engineers might not always be raising the flag that says, "Hi, I really need to know everything about the privacy risks in my code." So, who do you find tends to own the privacy tech in a company? And then the second part is, how does Privado intersect with building and maintaining this on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if you take a step back, right, like it's essentially like the data problem inside a company is owned by like multiple people, and that what makes the answer a bit complex. And like if you talk to any privacy tech vendor, you will find the answer to be a little different, right? From our perspective, essentially, like the privacy team is interested in two things, right? Getting the visibility on personal data and how personal data flows and the use of personal data, right? Governance of personal data inside the company. Also, like security teams are super interested because they want to make sure customer data is protected. So they want to know if you have credit card number, or is that credit card number going to logs, and if yes, they want to make sure that doesn't happen, or if it's being shared with a third party. So that's what they are interested in. So I would say like a chief privacy officer or a data protection officer or a CISO are the ones who benefit the most from the reporting of Privado. So they are the ones who are buying Privado. They're the ones who are consuming the reports out of Privado. On the users, is typically like it could be anyone on the privacy side, like a privacy manager or an analyst who are trying to drive things like data mapping, ROPA reports, and privacy by design. or a privacy engineer who's interested in getting like 100% visibility into data flows in their engineering systems and applications. We also have security engineers as the end users who are trying to see the data security vulnerabilities that could arise from Privado. I mean, that could arise from personal data either leaking to logs, or which database is this data being stored at, so that they can protect it better. So that's how we see it typically, like, Privado is being bought and used today. Um, and I would say the end users are always developers, right? So they are at the receiving end of these alerts, these assessments. So they have to really like the product, they have to really adopt the product. But ultimately, the reports are consumed by someone in the privacy, security, and the data governance.
Well, thank you for that.
Uh, I Yeah, I think you also had a question on how does Privado help in building and maintaining a privacy program, right? So yeah, I think like let's take like one simple example of data mapping, right? That's probably like the foundation of any privacy program, right? When it comes
Woohoo.
to engineering that,
I want my T-shirt.
I'm just celebrating that data mapping is the foundation of a privacy program. Woohoo.
oh yeah, that's 100% correct. If your data map is outdated, like your privacy policy is incorrect, your RUPA reports are out of date, you can't honor a DISA request because you don't know where your data is. So how would you honor deletion request or subject access request, right? So if we take that as an example of building a privacy program, Privado really automates that entire process for your engineering teams by scanning the code automatically, right? So you plug Privado in, and within minutes you start to see this data map building for each of your product and application, right? And that's what we're really going for as well, like that speed and how fast you can get that visibility. And from a maintain perspective, I think the biggest problem is once you create these data maps, whatever way you create it, when it comes to engineering, they're shipping code every 2 weeks. So what Privado really enables is the moment a new code change is pushed, we do two things. One is we read that and update your data maps. So your privacy policy is updated, your RUPA reports are updated, you have a accurate inventory of where all you need to delete the data in case a deletion request comes in. And so that's the maintaining part of your data map. But also from a privacy by design perspective, we can ensure all your top-down privacy commitments you've made in a privacy policy or your GDPR requirements are adhered, because if the software development goes beyond that, we create an alert, we can stop that code from going live, we can educate the developer on why that happened, and then we can enforce that during the software development life.
Super fun.
So recently, you had a blog post about how proactive AI could have prevented a massive data breach. Could you share more with our audience about AI and this idea?
Yeah. So it was, I think, less to do with AI, but it was more about like I think that was about API. Uh, like proactive API discovery, but like the concept just is the same, right? It's basically as more and more software is developed, it's being developed faster than ever. You have more engineers in a distributed team working on it, right? And the more it happens, you will end up with situations where you have a product where there is an API connected to a production database and that's not protected, right? Uh, or it has some weak security or weak authentication. So I think the core concept is the same, wherein on two levels. One is that in all your security threat modeling, you need to add personal data there because that can really help you prioritize that. You have an application where there is an API which is insecure, and also you can access personal data or a database with personal data that is super high risk. You need to fix it. So that's like number one, was the argument that we were making, that you need to add personal data to your security threat modeling examples. And the second thing was they need to be available to developers as they're building it, so that such changes are caught early on and remediated early on before they're pushed to production. So that's like the core argument behind that blog. And in fact, like anything we do at Privado is how can you shift the entire privacy testing, the entire privacy risk management earlier in the development lifecycle, and so you can prevent costly data breaches.
So, with that in mind, we like to ask sometimes people with their big crystal ball, where do you think privacy is going in the next couple of years?
Yeah, great question. I mean, of course, I think about that problem a lot since I'm building in this space. But yeah, I think as I was saying, and I would try to tie it back to the core challenge, which is privacy teams or security teams or companies in general are in this firefighting mode because of this privacy that they have built over time. And the thing is, like, with all the tooling in the market, all the investments in, it's still not solved. That's the reason you have fines. That's the reason companies are saying they don't know what's happening with data. And I really think there will be a shift left for privacy movement, like it was for application security, probably like 8-10 years back. And privacy will become embedded in the software development lifecycle. I do believe every code change which will be pushed to production by a company will go through a privacy code scanner, and that will make sure it does not violate any privacy law like GDPR or CPRA or your own privacy commitments that you've made to your end users. And if you do this right, if the shift left approach works, privacy truly becomes like an engineering enabler. And again, like tying it back to your introduction initially, basically you can meaningfully build products which are not only user centric but have trust at the heart of it, because you've taken care of it right at the level where it was being developed, and it's not bolted on later. You don't have that debt to fight later. So I really think that there will be this strong shift left movement for privacy.
Everything we've been talking about is actually going to come to fruition. Woo! Manawa, who picked today?
I want to know what lottery ticket I want to play for this crystal ball.
We should have played the lottery ticket for the $1 billion that was handed out last week.
Okay.
We didn't buy that.
Darn, I missed it. Okay. What is your best personal privacy tip you'd offer to your friends if you're at a cocktail party on the top of a building like we were on Saturday?
Don't use internet. No, I'm joking. You can't escape it now.
That could be good advice. Don't use the internet.
No. On a serious note, I do think like simple things, right? Like using VPN, using browsers like Brave. So I truly think privacy will become a differentiator for consumer products. There will be companies whose axis of differentiation will be privacy, and those are the companies we have to look for and sort of adopt them more. And I think that's happening already, and it'll happen more and more. So yeah, my advice would be to use tools like VPN, Brave, clear your cookies. I think those things would be my personal privacy.
So now when you're not building a privacy software company, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, I would say listening to music. I think that's my de-stressor. I do that all the time. And I probably have been doing that since I don't remember when now. But yeah, listening to music from across the world, some amazing Indian music from like classic rock. That's been one of my favorite genres, and instrumental rock. Yeah, that's what I do.
What classic rock band do you like the best?
Guns N' Roses. I've seen them twice.
Okay. Cool.
So how can people find you and learn more?
Yeah, sure. So you can visit our website, Privado.ai. And all the information is there in case you want to speak with us. I'm also I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn and we can chat there.
That sounds excellent. We're so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you for sharing all of this very helpful and interesting code level information.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.